I'm here with Wen-Yi Lee to talk about her amazing new book, The Dark We Know. It's coming out August 13th, and it's published under Gillian Flynn Books. My imprint is Zando, and I'm just so proud. Thank you for letting me be just a part of this, because I picked up this book and I did not put it back down. It was like my kids were like, "Can you feed us?" No, 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 go away. So it was truly one of those books, like Stephen King level of intensity and fright, but also real humanity. Can you start by telling readers just a little bit about the book itself, what it's about?
The Dark We Know is a queer YA horror in which a bisexual Chinese American art student must return to this haunted small town that she ran away from. And she reunites with her estranged childhood best friend to confront this supernatural evil that killed their friends 2 years ago. It's, about grief, it's about shame, it's about isolation. I think it's about coming home and reconciling with those ghosts, with those demons, literally, figuratively.
Number one, you managed to put those all in a book that's driven by this horror story, which is amazing, and it's also rich and layered and textured, and balanced. And I was curious, first of all, when you decided to start writing about all these different themes, did that dictate to you that this should be horror?
I think when I started writing it, it wasn't meant to be horror at all. But when I was writing it, it was very much just me in the middle of like COVID, wanting to get like a story out about loss and about, yearning for reconnection, and about like returning to a place that you hadn't been for a long time. And sort of ghosts from your past. Without really intending to, I ended up with this ghost story. And this element of this haunting angel, because I was writing, sort of drawing on Spring Awakening, which has a lot of these haunting angel motifs.
How did you come to writing? Were you a writer since childhood, or?
One of those people. I've been writing like all my life. Started in, like fanfic.
What was your fanfic revolving around? Must know.
So I wrote a lot of Star Wars fanfic.
Hi.
I wrote some Harry Potter fanfic in the day. I had little bits here and there. I wrote a lot of Star Wars. I think I always come back to like hope and found family in Star Wars, which I think you see of in The Dark We Know as well.
Are you someone who watches movies or listens to music a lot, or kind of what brings you inspiration as a writer?
I'm a big Taylor Swift fan, so Seven by Taylor Swift sort of made its way in there. There's a line about are there still beautiful things, which is sort of unlocked also like a thesis of the book for me. I'll read like beautiful books and sort of be inspired by the prose. I watched a bunch of like Haunting of Hill House, like Bly Manor, like that sort of like character driven like horror that's like quieter but also like reflecting a lot more on grief and like ghosts as memory and shades of the past and things like that.
Tell me about your main character. Like, sometimes my main characters surprise me and they turn into very different people as they go along, and then I have to go back and kind of rewrite and go like, oh, I figured out who you are. Now I've got
Yeah. Yes, definitely. And then you're always like, why couldn't you have come in like before I wrote like 50,000 words?
Exactly.
But yeah, they go off and do their own thing. Yeah, so Isa is the Chinese bisexual art student in question. She sort of borrows from Ilsa from Spring Awakening, who is a runaway from an abusive family, and she runs away to like a art colony. The core of her character has always stayed the same. She was always, this sort of headstrong, independent character who comes back. I guess what sort of changed in excavating was unpacking how much of that shame potentially, and that shame and that isolation could have, been influenced by a religious background, especially growing up queer, and growing up as one of the few like kids of color in a predominantly white town. It was almost like I sort of went on a kind of journey with her, because I think in the first drafts she was very much like she was all good. She was like all healed. As I sort of like revised the book, I realized that no, actually, like she's sort of lying to herself about that.
You go to some dark places in the book. Does your writing stay with you after you leave? Are you able to kind of compartmentalize and go, the day is over and go on your way? Or like how, because I always feel like I'm a method writer. Like I get so into my characters that I kind of like I start moving like them when I'm really writing something and I'm thinking that way and and it takes me a while to like really, I got to kind of shake it off and then give myself another 15 minutes before I see anyone so I can kind of undo the dark stuff.
Yeah, I think for this book, especially because I was writing it like in lockdown, it was just very much like me and my head and like this book for like an entire month, like end on end. So it probably wasn't like the healthiest thing in retrospect. Um, but how much of that was the book and how much of that was, a pandemic? I can't say. I mean, I'm curious if you've experienced the same because obviously your books also go to fairly dark places.
It clings to me a little bit, and that's how I know I'm doing my job right. I mean, if you're able to just hop up and be like, okay, well done, I don't know personally that, at least for me, that would not be a good sign. But one of my friends gave me this little paperweight that sits on my desk. Leave the crazy downstairs.
Oh, I need that. Yeah, that's a good advice.
Yeah. So truly, at the end of the day, I usually will watch some sort of like old time 1950s musical dance number. That's usually my
It's the
go-to.
musicals.
Yeah, like Moses Supposes from Singing in the Rain makes me just grin. I've probably seen it 1,000 times, and I'm always like, did it? And my kids will know the workday's over. They'll be like, we heard Moses Supposes, so we figured we could come into your office. So, do you have any wish that readers take away from this book? It's so rich, again, like so many layers and textures, and I just think so important to have queer characters. I just think it gives people. I've had I wrote about sharp objects, and that's a lot to do with self-harm and self-cutting, and the number of people who've come up to me and thank me for it just because it gives them a vocabulary
Yeah.
to talk to people about it. They can say, read this book, and like it helps me explain how I feel. And that's been
Yeah,
really
well,
meaningful to me, certainly.
I would like anyone to take away a sense of hope and a sense of healing and a sense of being held, just, not being alone.
It is thrilling and intense, but also deeply human. And so thank you for writing it and letting me
Thank you for publishing
publish
it.
it. Yes. So Dark We Know, out August 13th, everyone.